Here we go.
Recording in progress.
Recording in progress. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I'm so glad that everybody joined us. So this is just a little hormones and happy hour. And as I had mentioned, I wanted to do this, and Jenny Swisher, who I will introduce in a second, was kind enough to join us because so many of us in the consistency crew group are right around the same age, and it's just a recurring theme that that I keep hearing, and myself included, is I just feel off and I can't lose weight and it's harder to do X, Y, and Z and all of the things. And I know I was running around in circles for years, literally, until I finally started getting some answers, thanks to Miss Jenny Swisher. So I will turn it over to her. A little background: we've known each other through Beachbody, but she has done more than Beachbody. She's a certified personal trainer, a certified hormone expert, fitness guru, very close to actually being a practitioner, which I am super excited about. So Jenny, thank you for joining us, my dear. And if you just kind of want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and, you know, kind of what brought you to the point where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for asking me to do this. I'm always happy to share and to answer questions as best I can, or at least point you in the right direction. So hopefully everyone here tonight is, you know, open to unmuting themselves and asking questions or sending messages in the chat. Like, the more interactive, the more I think you guys will get the most out of this. So thanks again, Angie, for having me on here. So a little bit about me, without taking too much of your time with my story. I do have a podcast episode about my story. So if you want to hear more details about it, you can. It's the very first episode launched on the Sync Your Life podcast. But a little bit just for the sake of this call, I guess you could say that my struggles began right after my husband and I got married. We were high school sweethearts. We got married 3 weeks out of college at the age of 22. And I had been having some issues during college with different birth control pills. And so I felt like I was crazy. I was having hot flashes. I was sleeping in a cold dorm of a sorority house, having hot flashes at age 22. And I thought something was wrong. So long story short, we got married right away. We had already planned on it. And we thought, let's go off the birth control pill. We're married now. Like, it's a little bit, you know, we felt a little bit safer. And so we went off of it. I went off of it, and it started this sort of cascade into what started for me as chronic migraine. And when I say that, I mean, I did not have a day of relief for 2.5 solid years. So here I was, newly married, dealing with chronic migraine. I had just secured what I thought was the job of my dreams, working in book publishing. Always thought I would kind of work my way up the corporate ladder there. And I couldn't show up to work without horrible pain. I was sitting under fluorescent lights and my headaches were horrible. At the time, didn't necessarily connect that the birth control was necessarily the problem. I knew that it had happened around the same time. But I just sort of was like, what's happening to me? Like, I've always been healthy. I've always been, you know, never had any health issues. And so I tell people, when I look back at that time of my life, there were oodles of weekends where I would just push through the work week. And on Friday nights, we would have a little date night, and I would just be counting down the hours until my husband would take me on Friday night to the urgent care after our date night so that I could get a narcotic injection to make it through the weekend. I was in so much pain. And then the week would start over again, and I would push through all week, and we would repeat the process. So you name it, I've done it. When it comes to migraine, I've done Botox. I've had 4 neck surgeries. I've done 14 different anti-seizure drugs. I've been in different drug trials. I did everything in sort of the modern medicine world, including seeing 14 different neurologists and spinal specialists and headache specialists. And they were all like, everything's fine. Your brain's fine. Your brain scans are normal. Like, sorry about you. And I felt like I was going crazy. So it led me into sort of a dark place. And thankfully, my yoga instructor and one of my very best friends, who I've also had on my podcast, her name is Jen also. We were on a walk one day, and I had my painkiller that I took in my pocket. And I just popped it out on our walk. And I said, Jen, I've just accepted that this is the way I'm going to live. I'm going to live with this headache every day. And I can't keep waiting in doctor's offices. I can't keep waiting for my doctor house to figure me out. And I took it. I took the pill right there. And she said, you've got to do something else. She's like, you can't stop. You can't give up. And I remember, and I'll never forget her words. She said, you have to be your own best doctor. and your own best advocate. And I felt like I had been. I felt like I was showing up, waiting for the right doctor to know what was going on with me or to do the right test to understand what was happening. And it just wasn't, I'd spent years in this struggle. And so she said, I want you to see one more person. She's like, I started seeing this functional medicine doctor. She's local. She's really great. I think you'll love her. And she's like, who knows? Like maybe she can offer some help. And at this point in my journey, I looked at her and I like rolled my eyes and I thought, okay, Jen, like I'll go see the cuckoo witch doctor for you. Like, we'll see how this goes. Like if the spinal surgeries didn't work, I'm sure this doctor is going to know. Right. And I was so sarcastic about it. Showed up though, to meet with this doctor. And for the first time over the course of that entire 2.5-year span, she was the first doctor to do any sort of lab work on me to look at my endocrine system. So I had had brain scans, I had had spinal scans, I'd had everything done to make sure that my neurological system was okay, but no one had ever looked at my hormones aside from just a simple blood draw. So when she looked at my hormones, she said very confidently, oh, she's like, well, your body isn't producing any progesterone. My response to that at the age of 25 was, what's progesterone? And she said, progesterone is your female fertility hormone. And I said, well, that makes a lot of sense because here we've been off the birth control pill now for 3 years. And that's also not happening. Pregnancy also isn't happening. So maybe that explains that too. So being who I am, I wanted to dive into, I don't want to just necessarily take a doctor's word for it. I want to understand. So I started this process. This was, I guess this has been a total of 16 years of a journey for me. And I started this process of just wanting to understand my own deficiencies and what was happening for me with my hormones. So fast forward, she took me off of all pharmaceuticals, cold turkey. She put me on a bioidentical progesterone cream, which we can talk about. She put me on some supplements like magnesium and zinc and some other things. And within 4 months, I was headache free. And I was able to drop 30 pounds with, at that time, good old P90X, and had sort of like this amazing experience just from on a holistic level. I was introduced to Beachbody around the same time that I was introduced to functional wellness, and it just married up perfectly, right? With like whole foods and cleansing and exercise, and also diving into the world with my doctor of holistic medicine. So that was my journey up to that point. And then in 2017, my headaches came back. And along with the headaches came some more weight gain. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. Like, I can't be going through this again. However, I knew what to do this time around. I knew that it had to do with my hormones. And so I went back to the doctor and I said, let's do some more blood work. Let's do some more lab work, see what's going on. We found out that really it was just more progesterone deficiency as I got older, which made sense. We were able to make some changes. And at that time, I was introduced to someone by the name of Dr. Stacy Sims. If you've not heard of her, I highly suggest following her on social media. She has a book called Roar, and actually her second book just launched yesterday. Both are specific to women's hormones and training and nutrition, which is totally where I geek out with both nutrition and fitness. And she offered a certification program called Women Are Not Small Men. She also has a viral TED Talk on the topic. So here I was experiencing my own little journey of ups and downs with hormones. I had also owned a gym for a short period of time. And in that gym setting, I was training men and women. And the difference between the two was men would not follow the meal plan, usually whatsoever. And after 90 days, they'd have amazing results. Women, however, would follow the meal plan most of the time. They would come into the gym 5 or 6 days a week. And they would say, I've been doing this for 90 days and I'm not seeing any changes. My body isn't changing. So I knew from all the stuff that I had been through, and I also knew from taking her course that this was, calories in, calories out might be true for men, but it's not true for women. And so I dove into it and I just said, I've got to figure this out. I've got to share this message with women because I don't think enough women know or understand their reproductive system. We don't always understand our sex hormones, let alone our entire endocrine system. And it's something that has been really enlightening for me just because of my own journey. So I thought, I'm going to set out on this journey to really just educate women about this, and then also tie in some newer science around what we call cycle syncing. So cycle syncing, and we can get into that, means, I like to tell everyone that I measure everything in energy. So I don't care about your weight. I don't care about your measurements even. I care about your energy. And so my question to you is, when you wake up in the morning, what's your energy? Do you feel a sense of vitality? Do you feel vibrant? Do you have high energy throughout the day? Or do you find yourself crashing midday, mid-afternoon, struggling to get out of bed in the morning, struggling with sleep? Your energy determines your life. And a lot of women are really willing to put themselves on the back burner so that their kids take precedent, so that their family and their spouses come first. And the whole time they're doing that, their check engine light's flashing and their energy's running low, and they're not necessarily piping up to say something's wrong, or worse, they are piping up. You are piping up and you are telling your OB or your doctor something feels off. And unfortunately, the doctors a lot of times are not super educated on this functional approach, this root cause approach of looking deeper into hormones. They just look at your normal ranges. They say, oh, you're in a normal range, everything's good to go. And it's not always the case. So anyways, all that to say, I have a personal journey with this, a personal struggle with this, both with weight and headaches and fatigue, adrenal fatigue, all kinds of things that I've battled myself. But in the last 5 years, I've just really dove into this specifically to say, how can I create a message around this for women? So my podcast was launched in January of this year. And my course, which is called Sync, How to Fuel and Train with Your Female Cycle, it was launched in 2020. So I'm still running that very consistently. So now it's just all about like telling as many women as I can so that women can feel confident in their own journey.
And I shared the link to Jenny's podcast in the chat. I'm telling you, start at number one. Maybe you could go to number two because you've kind of heard her story, but that's how I mean, there's so much amazing information, and knowledge is power. And I was that person that my check engine light was flashing, and doctor after doctor was like, you're normal, eat less carbs. And I'm like, this is not normal. So I really encourage you to take a listen to the podcast. But I'm going to jump into some questions, kind of touching on, sorry, I'm adding more people here. Okay, so Jenny, you mentioned birth control pill, which is kind of where things started. And in our group, we've gotten lots of those questions. I am not on the pill. I have not been on the pill since Ava was 6 weeks old because it made me feel crazy. And I was like, nope, got to figure something else out. However, lots of women are. So, Carmen, do you want to ask your question or do you want me to read it? You're welcome to unmute and ask.
Sure. Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
I'm Carmen. So it's funny because Angie mentions birth control making her feel crazy when she's on it. For me, when I'm not on it, I'm crazy. So that is what it has been used for me right now, is to kind of level things off. I know I need to be off of it at some point soon because I'm approaching 45, and my practitioner said, yeah, definitely you need to. But I'm quite honestly terrified because I've had times when I've had to go off of it, and literally like it's a high anxiety to the point of like non-functioning at sometimes.
And have you felt that anxiety like forever, like since your 20s, or when did it come on?
Yeah, just after having my first child. So it was like a postpartum type thing. I only started on birth control once I got married. I didn't have any trouble going on birth control. It was every time I got off of the hormones, any kind of big change in hormone is really horrible for me. Yeah. So
what kind of, are you on like a progestin only pill or?
It's like a low estrogen something. I forget what it even is, like what it's called.
That's what I took, was low estrogen in my teen years. Okay. So, I mean, I have to give the disclaimer, especially because we're recording. So I want everybody to understand I'm not a doctor and I can't diagnose or prescribe. However, like I tell my course women, I will be as candid with you as I can, and I will give you the information that you need to go to your doctor with the right questions. So, in my experience with this, I would say that you're not the first person who's told me this. But there has to be a reason why, okay, so let me start first with just a little description of birth control. I mean, I know most of us understand, but just to kind of start with that baseline, when you're on any sort of oral contraceptive pill, what that oral contraceptive is doing is it is suppressing you from ovulation. So it is giving you a synthetic hormone, which means man-made, right? It's not a natural hormone. You call it a chemical, you call it man-made, whatever you want to call it. It's a fake hormone that you're being given at a dose that will suppress your ovaries from ovulating. So if it can keep you at this sort of constant hormone, right? If it constant hormone levels by suppressing ovulation, because just so you guys know, when you do ovulate, right, hormones surge to drop that egg, your estrogen rises, your FSH, your progesterone comes into play. On birth control, none of that happens. It's sort of like a flat line of hormones throughout the month. So when you're suppressing ovulation, what it's doing for you is it's controlling, right? It's keeping you from having any surges or higher low fluctuations, which is keeping you feeling stable and steady on an emotional level. So what that tells me is that obviously without it, you're having an imbalance that's happening that's causing you to feel that way. The fact that you said it started for you postpartum rings a bell for me, because a lot of women who are experiencing postpartum depression and postpartum issues, especially when it comes to anxiety, are dealing with progesterone deficiencies. When you're dealing with progesterone deficiency, your progesterone is not only your fertility hormone, it's most known for its calming effects of the brain. So it passes the blood-brain barrier, which means that it has a calming effect just as much as melatonin would on your body. Progesterone is a calming hormone. So if your body is not producing progesterone, then that means that you're in a state of estrogen dominance when you are off of that birth control pill. That means that your estrogen is a great hormone. It aids with libido. It makes us feel sociable, right? It actually helps us build muscle mass. Estrogen can be a good hormone. I don't want to put a bad MO behind it. However, when it is unrivaled, when it does not have progesterone to balance it out, it makes us anxious. For me, when I am not on progesterone supplementation, I feel like I'm going to freak out. I can't get in my car. I have like panic attacks to the degree that I literally can't function. So I wish this was talked about more, because if I had $1 for every woman that I've talked to who is dealing with massive anxiety issues, and it almost always comes back to either a progesterone deficiency or what we would call estrogen dominance, which is where your estrogen is too high in relation to your progesterone. So for you, the birth control pill, I'm guessing, is keeping everything like this all the time, which is helping you feel steady. And then as soon as you come off, whoosh, that estrogen comes back up and your body isn't producing enough progesterone and you're back into that like fight or flight situation. So I don't want to tell you what to do. I think this is probably what's happening for you, since you are, like you said, 45 and you're thinking of coming off of this at some point anyway. My suggestion would be to come off of it, and you could use some supplements that help with anxiety. I can give you a couple to ask your doctor about. One would definitely be magnesium. Anybody that's on this call or listening recorded, if you're not taking magnesium, start. I know that was a huge thing for Angie too.
It's the best thing ever. Like,
yes.
Legit. Ever.
Yes. And if you are taking it and you're not seeing a difference, I want you to pay attention to the type of magnesium you're taking. So there are different forms of magnesium. Dr. Laura Bryden, who is somebody that I follow, she advises magnesium glycinate. Magnesium glycinate is usually the best absorbed form of magnesium. So some women will say, oh, I've been on magnesium citrate or I've been on magnesium oxide and I don't see a difference. Well, it could be that it's not absorbing properly for you. So magnesium glycinate tends to be the best. Ask your doctor for your dosing, but definitely take the over-the-counter recommended at the very minimum. Most doctors will tell you to increase that. Really quickly, the reason behind that is our soils are depleted. So we're not getting enough magnesium in our diet. Magnesium is a calming nutrient, and it is not found in our food, unfortunately, as much as it was hundreds of years ago. And so with it, you will find that I actually can link you to an article. And Angie, if you want to Google it, it's Laura Bryden's blog, Lara Bryden, and she has a blog post called 8 Ways That Magnesium Rescues Hormones. So magnesium is also a natural progesterone booster, and then it actually will help you sleep. The other one that I would recommend too is L-theanine. So that's capital L-theanine, just like it sounds, THEANINE. I would recommend it in like a dropper, like an under the tongue dropper. You can get it from Amazon. And L-theanine is better, in my opinion, than melatonin when it comes to sleep, because with melatonin, you can kind of create a little bit of a reliance, so to speak. With L-theanine, you're attacking what are called the GABA waves of your brain. So you're actually increasing the GABA wave production of your brain. And GABA waves are what help you feel more positive, happier, more calm. And so if we're using L-theanine to boost those feel good GABA waves, it's going to kind of combat that, anxiety. So I would say magnesium and L-theanine could kind of help you ride that roller coaster. And after you've been off the birth control pill for, I would say 2 cycles or so, I would recommend having some testing done to kind of verify estrogen dominance, or to see if that's what's at play for you. And if it is, finding a functional medicine doctor who will put you on the proper supplementation for that. Because I assure you, like my husband can tell you, he has had to drive home from road trips to get my progesterone cream if I forget it. Like, it is that important. Like, I will literally lose my, if I don't have it. So, but if you're feeling, if anxiety is plaguing any of you guys, have your progesterone checked, in relation to your estrogen. And if your doctor is not looking at the ratio between the two of those, find a new doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have blood work done on your estrogen and progesterone, and they can officially technically be normal. They can both individually be in the normal ranges. I just did a post on this today, actually. And so the problem is that not a lot of doctors are familiar with looking at how the two of them are working together, how they interplay. So I like to say that estrogen and progesterone are sort of like, they're in a symphony. They throughout the month, throughout your menstrual cycle, they're working in symphony with one another. And if the estrogen becomes too high in relation to that progesterone, and there's too big of a gap happening, that's when we start to see trouble sleeping, irregular periods, PCOS, anxiety, headaches for me, right? So my big trigger is my headaches, but.
And I will say, I am one of those people. My progesterone and my estrogen were within normal ranges, but it wasn't until I took Jenny's course that I even knew that there was anything about a ratio between the two. And I'm super low. Like, we should be between, correct me if I'm wrong, Jenny, what is it? 200 to 300 should be the ratio.
Yes.
I'm at 75. So I was like significantly low. So these are things that like Jenny teaches in her course, like what to take to your doctor. So I just went in and I told her, I said, I understand I'm within normal ranges, but my ratio is off. I would like to try to supplement with bioidentical progesterone cream. And she sat there for a minute, but you know what? She said, let's try it. And that and the magnesium, I'm telling you, the magnesium, Carmen, it is and I'm not exaggerating when I say every 3 weeks, I felt like I was like on the verge of a divorce. My husband could not breathe without being annoyed. I couldn't, it was not fun for anybody. And so, those two things. Real quick, before I move on to the questions, because I just started thinking, Jenny, if you don't mind, you can answer those questions maybe in the group, but if there's somebody on here that, has taken the time to be on here, if you guys have a question that you'd like to just unmute and chat with Jenny, otherwise I will just go on to the next question.
Could I ask one more quick question? Jenny, are you in Indy?
Yes, I'm in Noblesville.
Okay. Because I live in Fishers. And so afterwards, I may just, if I can message you and just get some recommendations for a functional medicine doctor, because I've wanted to go. My niece had a lot of trouble, went to Cleveland Clinic, has a fantastic functional medicine doctor, and is now going for nutrition and functional medicine. So I just need to know, like, who is good here. So I don't mind messaging later, not taking up time, but that'd be great.
Yeah. And I mean, since you're local to me, I'm happy to give you some recommendations. But if you guys are not local, one resource you can look at is ifm.org. That's the Institute for Functional Medicine's database, so to speak. So you can actually search by zip code to see what is close to you. For anybody in Indy, feel free to message me and I can give you a few recommendations. So yeah.
Thank you.
In September, I'll be able to do more as it pertains to lab work. I like to tell people I'm happy to look at labs now as your friend, but in September, I'll be able to look at them officially.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions that they want to unmute and ask?
I have one. I know that you were talking about your headache, your migraines. So I suffer from hormonal migraines too. They either come the week of or the week before. And right now, I take, well, I've changed a few things, but you were kind of talking about birth control. So I've been on birth control since I was 18. I went off in 2020 for a little bit so I could freeze my eggs, but tried to take estradiol
Okay.
instead to see if that would help instead of going back on the birth control, but it didn't do anything.
Okay. Yeah.
So went back on birth control, but I still get my migraines. I've tried skipping.
Yep.
And I did talk to my doctor. I think after I get back from vacation, I am going to go off of it so I can get some testing done. She is just a regular OB. She's not a functional. So I'll have to make sure I ask her those questions. But if it doesn't get too much if she doesn't get too much into the detail, I may reach out to you for the functional.
Sure.
But so how, so you had them every day.
Yeah. So I think and I think I already know where you're heading, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really quickly. I do want to touch on two quick things that we haven't mentioned yet, but one is, if you're wondering to yourself, like, okay, I think maybe my doctor will run the right testing, or I'll ask my doctor about it, definitely start there. I do have a podcast episode though, called Finding the Right Practitioner. And it's going to probably be one of the top few that you should go listen to first. That's going to tell you how you know your practitioner is the wrong one, basically. So it's going to tell you, like, I asked my doctor this and she said this. Okay, wrong doctor is my answer. So I love doctors. There's definitely a place for modern medicine. But in my experience, if they're not familiar with this particular thing, you need someone else, even as just a second opinion. So I'll just start with that. But it's interesting that you just said that about, I have a story for you. And I just want to say this first, and then I'll come back to you. But when my husband and I were, you could call it a fertility journey. It was a very short-lived infertility journey. We started seeing a fertility specialist, and, I told him, we've been off birth control for several years now. We're not really sure, why nothing's happening. Our OBGYN is having us come to you just to see if there's anything going on. And I told him, I said, I have this history of headaches, and I told him about it. And at that stage of my life, I knew where they were coming from. I knew that they were triggered. I knew that they were from estrogen dominance. And so I told him, I said, I'm really uncertain about this infertility journey for me, because I know that there are hormone injections. I know that there are things. And I am, like, my husband and I were very solidly in a place of, let's see what we can do here. But we're not going to do things that could put my headaches back in jeopardy, because it's just a really dark place that I've already come out of. And so, and I now have 2 adopted girls, and life works out, and I love them dearly. So, but I feel like at that moment, it was so funny, because I was in this appointment, and he said to me, like, here he is, probably, I would say, in his 60s, and very experienced local infertility doctor. And he says, oh, well, if you're having hormonal headaches, he's like, you need estrogen. And I was like, okay. And at this point, I was thinking to myself, like, that sounds counterproductive to what I'm doing, because I've been told through functional medicine and what's working for me that my estrogen is high in relation to my progesterone. So wouldn't giving me estrogen make that gap bigger? Right. And he's like, no. The reason you're having the headaches is because when you get close to your period, everything's dropping. Everything drops right before your period. He's like, so that's why you're getting the headaches. So he gives me these little estradiol. That's what you said you were given, estradiol tablets. And he's like, next time you have one, try it. So I bring it up to both my OB and my natural doctor, and they were like, you can see. But my naturopath was like, she kind of gave me this look like, I don't know, like, you're prone to dominance. Like, we'll see. I took it 2 different occasions, and had to go to the emergency room. My headache was so bad. So no, it was not the case. So the fact that it didn't work for you tells me that maybe, again, it kind of comes back to this, what modern medicine doctors believe or understand, as opposed to maybe what a functional doctor would think. So it could be that your headaches are actually that gap that we were just talking about. And that's actually very, very common. I would say that most women who are dealing with premenstrual headaches or even ovulatory headaches, which I also will sometimes get, it's because of the estrogen in relation to the progesterone. And so even something like a progesterone cream, like we were just talking about, could be helpful for you in combating those headaches. So if you're on birth control for the headaches and that's something that you're looking to possibly stop, I would give you the same advice I just gave Carmen. I would come off of it, wait a couple cycles, have some testing done, verify. And if you're low progesterone, find a doctor that could put you on that for sure.
Okay. Yeah. The birth control doesn't do anything for my migraines. Like are
you still coming off to bleed?
Yeah, like my pill actually, it recently changed. But yeah, there would be a week where I wasn't taking anything.
Mm-hmm.
But it did, like you said, sometimes I get them before my period comes, like the week before, or sometimes it's the week of.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I did the egg freezing and was on the hormones, I had to go off the birth control. I couldn't take my Imitrex or anything like that. And so that's when they recommended like the magnesium, the Tylenol, and that, but that didn't do anything. And it's funny because I've always been told that with hormonal migraines, it's hard to combat them because because I've always been given some kind of medicine and it doesn't always work. The Imitrex or the rizatriptan doesn't always work. And it's just funny. So
I mean, so it's one of those things where like, I think that headaches are one of the most understudied things in medicine. It's something that doctors just don't understand. The brain is very complex. But I know for me and my unique story, and I'm not here to say that everybody's is the same, but I do know a lot of women who are dealing with hormonally triggered migraine. When they start to understand their cycles, especially off the pill, they start to more closely find the patterns and they start to see like, oh, well, these headaches are happening for me at ovulation when my estrogen surges. And they are happening for me on day 26, 2 days before I start bleeding, right? Because of that drop and because my progesterone is not high enough. And so perhaps coming off of it and having the testing and maybe, pattern tracking could help you get a better idea. And I'm happy to look at that with you. And I've got some other headache tricks up my sleeve too. If you want to talk offline, we can.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the line wanting to ask a question? Yes, Sarah Lydia.
Aha, I had to find the unmute button. Hello.
Hey.
So I'm Sarah Lydia. Hello. And I have gone through 3 failed IVFs and also have adopted. But I've recently had, within the past 3 years, lots of wild health issues. And some of it stemmed from a shoulder injury that I was supposed to have. They gave me birth control so I wouldn't bleed at a certain time of when the surgery was going to happen. Within a week, I got a blood clot. And within the next week, I had a dual pulmonary embolism. So it was kind of like a wild journey for me. Mm-hmm. And that happened in 2016. And then I kind of had lots of weird health issues going on. Headaches became very prominent. And I definitely realized within my cycle that it was at that dip
pattern. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But within the past 2 years, I've got diagnosed with a cyclical vomiting syndrome, mm-hmm. which is like kind of a gut related. And basically I have to puke for 12 hours at a time and lose all of my it's a wild ride too. But luckily I've been symptom free, or at least episode free, for about 2 years now. I had like 6 episodes pretty much really back to back within a short amount of time, because each episode lasts about 3 days. Usually end up in the ER. But I guess my symptoms have like started to seem like they're coming back. Like morning I feel like kind of like I get sick in the mornings.
Mhm.
And like my headaches were always the like trigger point, so I could kind of like
Yeah.
feel like I had to calm myself down, and I feel like I'm starting to learn how to regulate
Yeah.
that calmingness
Mhm.
just to settle it. But I feel like it's been triggered recently. I've like had a new job, I just graduated college, so like lots of life changes too, but
Mhm.
it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah. Well, so cyclical vomiting syndrome is not something new to me. I have a friend who actually struggles with that as well. I know there's a neurological tie-in there. So once again, my disclaimer that I'm not a doctor, but I will be your friend as you work with your doctor. I think so. A couple of different things. If you're telling me that this kind of started with the shoulder injury and that's kind of where you saw this sort of domino effect happening, I will just bring this up. And I realize it sounds a little bit crazy, but in case anyone else can benefit from this as well, there's a lot to be said for like what birth control or oral contraceptives. Obviously there are some women who are more sensitive than others, right? Like I'm having hot flashes at age 22 in my cold dorm and that was not normal. So the fact that you've dealt with the pulmonary embolisms and those types of side effects tell me that your body and birth control were like a no-go, right? Like this is not going to work out. The other thing that we know about the birth control pill and what I believe caused my estrogen dominance and what caused me to not produce enough progesterone naturally, I think it all stemmed from the birth control pill, because what we do know now is that the birth control pill actually, I'll say it this way, for a lot of women, it is I don't know what the right word is. What's the opposite of detoxify? It toxifies the liver. Like it makes your liver become more toxic. So the liver is not able to excrete it. It's synthetic hormone. And so what that does is it causes the liver to sort of create this buildup of toxicity. And that's where we can start to see your liver is actually like, it plays a huge role in your body, not just from a gut perspective, but also neurologically too. So we start to see a lot of issues that can come up when someone who's sensitive to synthetic hormone already has a sort of toxic experience like you've had, especially kind of coming from the liver. So my question to you would be, and this is going to sound cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but trust me, I've been around with this for a minute. And Angie, what are we doing? Are we going to hop back on this link? No?
No, sorry. I was just upgrading. I just upgraded. So we have unlimited
Okay.
minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
It was like counting down. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
how fast can I do this?
I was like, how fast can I answer this question?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, take your time.
So my question to you would be, start tracking whether or not your symptoms are, and this is going to sound crazy, but I want to find out from you if they're happening close to a full moon.
Yes, and I can answer that right now. I
Yeah.
know that.
So like this past weekend was a full moon, or, Monday was a full moon, Sunday, Monday. So I want you to follow somebody on Instagram. Her name is Dr. Jess MD. And I'm going to give you this disclaimer that she's a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Like she's a little bit on sort of that end of the spectrum where you're like, oh, I don't know. Is she credible or is she awesome? I can't tell. So anyways, she is sort of the expert on the subject of mold toxins, liver toxicity, and parasites. Ironically, my headaches started, yes, I was on birth control for years, but they also started after my honeymoon where I got a parasite in Mexico. And so I have always noticed that my headaches were not only, so just so you guys know, your menstrual cycles when you're not on birth control typically will follow the moon. So you're either what's called a full moon ovulator or a new moon ovulator. Most women who are on a regular cycle, I should say. So for me, I've always been a full moon ovulator and a new moon bleeder, so to speak. But I started to notice that my headaches were cyclical in the way that they were both, menstrually cyclical with my hormones, but they were also following the patterns of the moon. She teaches about liver toxicity and how this is connected to that, and how basically the reason behind it is when there's a full moon, there's less melatonin production and more serotonin production in the body. And things like parasites and excess toxins that live in the liver feed off of that serotonin. And so when there's more serotonin, there's more, what?
You said less what and more what?
There's less melatonin and more serotonin when there's a full moon. So a lot of women will experience random things, whether, I mean, for you, maybe it's cyclic vomiting. For me, it's migraine. And that could be that, yes, estrogen dominance is the reason I have headaches, but let's go a layer deeper. Like, why do I have the estrogen dominance? Okay, well, it could probably be from liver toxicity from birth control and or parasite, right? So she says liver toxicity, parasites, and mold toxins are usually sort of the bottom, right? Like that's as deep as you can go to root cause. And she has something that I just started doing a couple months ago. It's called Cell Core. Definitely don't do it on your own. You're going to want to have like a practitioner to do it with you, but it's a cellular level cleanse. So what it does is it will actually bind to the toxins that are in your liver and excrete them. So there's drops, capsules, etc. There's no shake or anything like that. It's just like a protocol. But that's been hugely beneficial. This was the first month actually that I did not have a severe migraine on the full moon, and I've been doing it for 2.5 months. Usually I just get a headache now. Like I used to have it all the time back in my 20s, and now I get them full moon and that's it. Like I don't get any other time. So anyways, I that could all sound crazy, but I think maybe having a functional medicine doctor in your corner and talking to them about this, sort of, you could even have like a GI map. That's something that you could request from a functional. Have you done that yet?
Not from the functional medicine, but I have it by track. What do you mean by a track?
So there's a couple of different, like some general practitioners will do like a stool test. But there's something specifically called a GI map that is more specifically looking at, it can find root causes, it can find parasite, it can find toxins in the liver. That could be helpful for you to know where this is coming from, and then to do something like a cell core cleanse or something on a cellular level to kind of clean it out.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Again, not a doctor, but that's what I would ask about.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good info, which I just realized I started my bleed on Tuesday, which was the day after the full moon. So note to self. Anybody else have any questions now that we don't, I mean, we have a time constraint to a certain extent, but I don't want to cut anybody off.
I do, if I can ask.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Irene. Jenny, it's fascinating listening to you. I don't want to say problem. I mean, I've been kind of working through this for a while. Is a little bit different, I think. A couple years ago, I started feeling like, and I'm going to be 47, I guess next month. Oh my God. Yeah. Next month. But I started feeling like my cycle was changing. So when I was a teenager, I had horrible cramps. Like if I didn't get that naproxen that first day, I'd be throwing up. I couldn't keep any food down. It was horrible. And I suffered through that. My mom did not understand birth control. No, there was no birth control. I just suffered through my teenage years, college, until finally when I was 25, I said, I'm tired of this shit. And I went on birth control, but only for like 3 years. And then I was off. And then after I had kids, I had no pain for years. It was beautiful. And then a couple of years ago, all of a sudden I started getting cramps again. And I thought, what is going on? And my cycle shortened. And I thought, this is not normal. I shouldn't be getting a cycle every 3 weeks, and I'm in pain again. So I did get things checked. I went through like a functional medicine. I was working with a nurse practitioner. And so I had to pull out my old lab results to see, because this is from a few years ago. The I'm not going to say it right. Dihydrotestosterone was high. And she said that was converting into estrogen.
Yes.
And so I've been on like a couple things, but it was the DIM that I've been taking for a while, and that helped. But I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, and I don't have, the anxiety. I don't think she never, recommended magnesium or anything for me, or anything else, progesterone, but I'm just taking some other supplements. But the DIM has helped, but it's still kind of, I mean, I'm not like pain free, and I don't know if that's not realistic to have like no pain. I felt like that was my reward for like giving birth to 2 humans, and the last one being like a completely natural birth. I'm like, this is my reward. I have no pain anymore.
Yeah.
So, but the cycle is still like so short, like 23 days, 25 days. And I don't know if there's
Okay.
anything to be looked.
And that test that showed the high testosterone was how long ago?
Oh goodness. I just had my last one just like last month.
Okay. And it was still high last month?
No, it's better now.
Okay.
It's a different lab, and so the results look so weird. But what she told me was to try on day 16. I had gone down to taking only 1 of the DIM, and I take turmeric also, but I take 1 DIM instead of 2. So she said on day 16 to up it back up to 2, and to see if that can help lengthen the cycle. So
Okay.
we'll see. I don't know.
And so, and the lab work you're having done is all blood work?
Yes, but it's
Okay.
day 21,
Right.
which I
And then
well,
she's
that's
also, she's looking at your progesterone and estrogen too.
yeah. So like this one, my progesterone was 5.56. I found the
Okay.
sheet.
And your estrogen was?
Oh goodness, now I'm have to.
Well, I mean, okay. So here
Yeah.
are my overall thoughts. So when your
Yeah.
testosterone is high, that's what we call like high androgens. So women do have small amounts of testosterone, but testosterone is typically like known as the male hormone. Men also have estrogen, but obviously it's known as the female hormone. So we have them, but they're considered androgens because they're sort of like, they're supposed to kind of be just hiding out in sort of 2% of the equation. When they become high, there are certain things that you can do to sort of detoxify those and to lessen those in the body. Your doctor's right. Testosterone does filter into estrogen. So it can, if your testosterone is high, it can contribute to more estrogen, which can go back to what we talked about with the estrogen to progesterone ratio. Sounds like your progesterone, 5.6, I'm guessing that's ng per ml. That would be like a normal progesterone number, so to speak. It wouldn't be considered necessarily deficient, but it kind of depends on what your estrogen number is to see what that ratio is. So 2 things. One is DIM. Great. Sounds great. I take 3 a day, so don't feel weird if they up you to more than 1. The other thing that I would ask about is something called CDG. That's calcium D-glucarate. It's another detoxifier that's good with estrogen and testosterone as well. Not necessarily good for everybody. It's going to be based on your lab work, but that's something that you can ask your doctor about. And then for your pain, there's a supplement that you can only get at Target. I think you might be able to get it at their website too, but I get it at Target, and it's called Semaine Health, SEMAINE. And it is an herbal concoction that is intended for menstrual pain. That combined with, and I'm going to forget the name of these patches. I can always find it and give it to Angie, or Angie, you can search on Amazon. They are like, what are the names of these things? They're like, let me look really quick. These actually make a huge difference for me. They are patches, kind of like little nicotine patches, so to speak. Only they are for, here they are. Okay, I'm gonna send it to you guys. Hang on. The only one I found quickly is the night relief one, but they also have a daytime relief one. It's called Patch MD PMS topical patch. And it is basically like a transdermal concoction that gives you a little bit of magnesium, a little bit of zinc, some things that are known to really help relieve menstrual cramps. And the third thing I would tell you would be raspberry leaf tea.
I have it at home.
Okay, good.
I have raspberry and the pau de arco, if I remember to do that, like ahead, because that's like uterine toner,
Yeah.
but yeah. And then I have the raspberry leaf tea.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So those things for pain. Otherwise, do you have the estrogen number? If not, we can talk about it later.
Find it. It's, I see
Okay.
the
It would say estradiol or E2.
Yeah, I'm looking. It's annoying. This new lab just throwing
So
me
there's
off.
something that, so here's what I'll do. I'll give you a homework assignment. So
Yeah.
when you find it, take that number, take those two numbers, your progesterone and your estrogen, and you'll go to Google and you'll search Omni calculator. It's called the
Okay.
Omni estrogen dominance calculator, and you'll plug in those numbers and it'll tell you what your ratio is. Most doctors will tell you that as long as you're between 100 and 500, it's normal, but doctors like Laura Bryden would tell you, no, you want 200 to 300, like Angie said.
Okay.
So see what your number is. And if it is showing dominance, which is that gap, you
Right.
may need some, not only the detoxification, but you may need some support where you're low.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? I just see testosterone and progesterone, but not the,
Well, she may not have tested it. Who knows? Yeah.
would be weird. Okay. All right.
The other thing that's worth mentioning just for everyone to hear is regardless, I mean, if you're on birth control, it's a little bit of a different story, but if you are a cycling female or, pre-menopause, if your periods are still happening, making sure that you get the proper testing. I have a podcast episode on this about proper testing, making sure that you're getting not just blood work, but you're getting either saliva or urine work done. I advocate for what's called the Dutch test. I actually have a $100 off code that I can give to Angie for you guys if you're interested. It's a home kit. You get it in the mail. You don't have to have a doctor work with you on it. They send you like a really comprehensive 30-page document showing you exactly where your levels are compared to where they should be. And the thing I love about the Dutch test is it's not based on, their normals are not based on the pool of people who have their tests done. Like typical blood work, when you go through your GP, the normal ranges are based on everybody that comes in to get this lab work. Like, what is the range that they see? Right. And so with the Dutch test, they say, no, that's not good enough. We want to know the optimal. So they show you where you are as compared to the optimal levels. So the Dutch test is urine, dried urine test, blah, blah, blah is what it stands for. Home kit, game changer. I do one twice a year just because I have issues with, I want to make sure I'm on top of any changes. But I would say annually, it's a great investment for your health. It will show you not only your sex hormones, it'll also show you your cortisol, which is your stress response, which we haven't even mentioned this. You can listen to this on the podcast. Like I have an episode on what are called the 4 phases of the hormone cycle and what happens as we get older, as we start entering our 40s. They're actually starting to find that it's happening for a lot of women now in their 30s, like late 30s, what we call perimenopause, the 10 years before menopause. What happens is we've already talked about estrogen and progesterone. Your progesterone, a lot of people think, oh, menopause, my estrogen tanks. Yes, in menopause, your estrogen does tank. But in perimenopause, which is that 8 to 10 year window before that, your progesterone is on a slow decline. And so if we think about it, right, we go back to that whole concept we talked about earlier of estrogen dominance. If your estrogen is staying here and your progesterone as you age is going like this, what's happening? The gap is getting wider and wider and wider as you get older. Here's what else is happening. Around the age of 40, your adrenal glands, which are these teeny tiny little glands that sit on top of your kidneys, they are what produce your cortisol, which is your survival hormone, right? That's your fight or flight. That's what's going to keep you alive if a bear attacks you in the jungle. Your adrenal glands are already producing the stress response with cortisol, but in your 40s, they start to also produce your sex hormones. So they also start to produce progesterone and estrogen as your ovaries weaken and your ovaries work less and less. So here's what happens. The gap goes like this. You're getting older, the progesterone's dropping and the adrenals are taking over that production now. So they're extra stressed. You want to know what most women do? They say, I'm gaining weight in my hips and thighs and my belly. And everything I did in my 20s and 30s isn't working anymore. So I guess I'll just work harder. And so they start to exercise more, cut carbs or restrict food more. And what happens is you're putting those adrenals into an extra state of stress. And so it's counterproductive to your physiology. So I like to tell people that when that starts to happen for you, when you start to see the progesterone declining, whether or not you're on supplementation, I like to, and that's where we can get into cycle syncing. I really like for you to figure out the patterns of your cycle, to know the phases of your cycle. When is ovulation happening for you? When is your follicular phase? When is your estrogen starting to rise? Once you know how that's happening for you, every month, you can start to align your workouts with that energy. It all goes back to the energy, right? You can align your workouts with that energy. You can align your nutrition with those ebbs and flows, and it is a game changer.
So I wanted, because you mentioned cycle syncing here, and we had a couple questions about it. So how does cycle syncing, how does somebody who's on birth control, or maybe who has had a hysterectomy, or maybe who does not have a regular cycle, how do they sync their cycle? What things are they looking
Yep.
for? How, because they still have hormones, but
Yep.
it's just different.
Yeah. So the first thing that I'll say, because this is really popular now for women to have like the Mirena IUD. If you're somebody who is on an IUD like the Mirena, your body is still ovulating, actually. I'm not sure if you knew that or not, but you're still having sort of the ebbs and flows of a normal menstrual cycle. You're just not having the bleed. So you can use something, my husband and I sourced this product called a sync scope, and I can talk about that here in a minute. You can actually track your ovulation that way. But the most important thing to know is what we've already referenced, which are that women are lunar beings. So we follow the phases of the moon. Like I said before, most women are either, I would say the majority of women are full moon ovulators and new moon bleeders, but there are a percentage of women who are the opposite. So what we do is in my program is we sync you to the moon. So if you're somebody who is on birth control, or you are menopausal, you're no longer having cycles, we will actually sync your energies to the moon, because science shows us that your energy does align with the moon's cycles. So that's my quick answer to that. But if you're on birth control, I mean, it kind of comes back to that original conversation we had about, your hormones are just a constant. They're kind of like a man's, right? They're being suppressed. And so they're just constantly this way. There are no highs and lows. So in a sense, there's not a lot of, you can sync with the moon, but there's not a lot of optimizing you can do for the actual hormone surges and the different things that should be happening if you were ovulating, if that makes sense.
Cool. Anybody else on here have any questions? Otherwise, I will quickly ask a couple of the ones that were posted.
I was just going to say, it's funny that you mentioned perimenopause and not being able to lose weight like you used to, and working out harder, because that's exactly what I've been doing lately.
Yeah, everyone does. It's not just you, sister.
No,
I get it.
no, that's me. And, and I had, out of all of my blood work, and I've shared this in the group, the only thing that really was like, bing, 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 was my cortisol. And while I do go to a functional medicine doctor, just because she may not be the end all be all, I'll just say that. I'll just say that. But, she was like, you need to reduce your stress, which is obviously easier said than done. But that's why she even said, it's not good to do all of these high impacts. And, like, I can't do max 30 the way that I used to do. I can still do it, but, because like Jenny was explaining, I was just beating myself further down, and no wonder I felt like shit. You know what I mean? And I also started really prioritizing my sleep. As much as I love to go to those 5:30 a.m. classes, I could wake up and I could be fine and I could go to class, but by 10 o'clock, I was done. I was crashed. I had a headache. And so it's just all of those cues that I've learned to listen to my body. And now I go to bed at usually about 10:30. I wake up at 6:30. I feel great. I no longer have that like 2 o'clock, like dragging my head. I mean, it used to be up to a point where I was going to pick up Nate from school, and it was almost like, I don't think I should be driving. I was that tired. I was just spent in the middle of the day. It was horrible. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a huge, so there's something out there called adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
A lot of general practitioners will say, that's not a thing, but functional medicine doctors will agree that it is. high state of stress, or it can be low cortisol, which surprisingly is also a high state of stress. My cortisol in 2017 was rock bottom. And my doctor was like, you're training too hard. I had just come off of, my daughter was a year old. So I was having the really fun experience of nighttime wakings every night and not sleeping consistently through the night, and training in my gym, training clients at a 5 a.m. boot camp and a 5 p.m. boot camp, and burning the candle at both ends. And so my cortisol was extremely low and was pulling. There's something that's called a cortisol progesterone steal. And so basically what that means is when your cortisol is depleted, it will start to pull from your sex hormones because it needs that fuel, so to speak. And we haven't even talked about the four-legged chair. We haven't even talked. I mean, there's so
At
much
the
more, you guys.
podcast too, ladies.
Yeah,
I'm
like,
telling
we
you,
haven't-
it's all in the
You gotta
podcast.
listen. Yeah, the four-legged chair, the 4 phases of the cycle. I mean, I
Yeah.
purposely have put these. We're up to 40 episodes. I purposely put them in the order that they are so that you can kind of. It's like bite size. You can kind of
Yeah.
learn as you go. But one thing that I just realized when you were talking that I forgot to say, I think it was to Carmen when you were talking about anxiety. I didn't get to talk about this whole concept of down regulation and stress. And I want to make sure I touch on it really quickly, because there are 3 main reasons why women are hormone imbalanced. There can be other reasons, but they're usually one of these 3. One is estrogen dominance, which we've already talked about. Going to happen probably to 80% of women anyway in perimenopause. So super common. The second is, does anybody want to guess what the other 2 are?
I
So
don't
one
know.
is what we're talking about now, which is stress. So your cortisol, if it's out of balance, whether it's high or low, right? If you're in a state of stress, and that could be not just like career stress or personal life stress, that could be environmental toxins, that could be environmental estrogens. Like there's a lot of different things that can be at play there for stress, overtraining, stuff like that. And the third one is blood sugar fluctuations. Most women are not eating enough protein and fat throughout the day to keep them satiated. So they're eating carbs and or processed foods, and they see their energy do this throughout the day. And so under fueling is a major, major problem. So to give you a really fast version of the four-legged chair, this is something that I teach in my course. There's an episode on it. You can dive into it deeper there. The endocrine system can be explained very simply. This should be taught in every sex ed class in America. But basically your endocrine system is made up of 4 different legs of the chair, so to speak. One is your sex hormones, which is your progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. There's other things in there, but we'll leave it at that. Your cortisol, which is your stress, your thyroid, and your blood sugar. So I once had a person tell me, what happens if you have that 4-legged chair, right? You have your endocrine system. What happens if I saw off a leg of the chair, even just an inch? What happens to the chair? Right? So even if it's your thyroid, or maybe like me, it's your progesterone and your sex hormones, whatever leg of the chair is off is the primary one for you to focus on, right? It's going to bring that chair back into balance, but it's going to cause symptoms and issues amidst the other pieces, amidst the other legs of the chair. So, right, if you're in a state of stress, it's going to affect the whole chair. If you're in a state of like, you're not fueling enough, or you're not satiated throughout the day, you're not keeping that blood sugar stable. I'm so excited about the future of what are called CGMs, constant glucose monitors. There's going to be some wearables coming out in the next couple of years, so people can really be understanding on a really deep level how their blood sugar is fluctuating throughout the day. I don't think a lot of women understand how much theirs really is. When that's happening, puts your body in a state of stress, right? Mm-hmm. So the whole, your hormones could be out of whack for a very simple reason, and not super complex. So I wanted to come back to this idea of down regulation. I could go on and on about this, but it's just kind of at the top of my mind because I just recorded an interview that's coming out in 2 weeks with this woman who wrote a book called Why Am I Like This? And she specializes in the topic of anxiety and trauma, and has a really unique personal story. Her book comes out in August. She's super cool. She's from Singapore. So we did an interview really late last night. But she was talking to me about this idea of down regulating the autonomic nervous system, and how I would say there are a lot of trends in our society right now around box breathing and different breathing techniques to help you relax, meditation, right? Meditation apps. But she has this really unique perspective, in that for people like me who absolutely hate, does anybody else hate Shavasana at the end of yoga? Or is it just, oh my gosh, most people love it. I hate it because I'm like, I have to do what? I have to lay still. Like, can I at least have a notepad to make my grocery list? Like, I cannot sit here. Like, I cannot be still. So I asked her about it on the podcast and she said, that's trauma. She said, trauma is not allowing you to feel safe. And because your brain doesn't feel safe, it will not let you get to the place of relaxation.
Oh, wow.
And it was a pivotal moment for me. It was a huge growth moment for me. And so the episode is going to be amazing. It was almost an hour long, so it'll be a long one, but it was so impactful on just how we really, our body is wired to survive. It's wired to freak out. And so kind of coming back to when you were talking about anxiety, I forgot to mention this and I just wanted to make sure that I did, but she has there's some awesome content coming on the podcast from her about how to really dig into that on a deeper level.
Yeah, I think, I think maybe a good thing that came out of the whole pandemic is that people are talking about mental health and that we are actually seeing, I mean, unfortunately, we're seeing the true physical effects that mental
Yes.
has on us. And after, my doctor said, you need to chill out. I was like, okay. I listened to this audiobook that was called Stress Less, Accomplish More, which actually it's all about meditation, but it sounds like to do more. But one thing that, and this is kind of going back to like trauma in your brain not letting you stay, and our bodies are meant to function in a certain way. And she was talking about just the importance of meditation and how, our high cortisol levels, that is a natural response to stress, right? Back in the day, it was because there was a tiger that was going to eat us. And so our bodies, when that happens, and this was fascinating to me, when that happens, our body says, I don't care what else is going on. I'm only focused on getting away from this tiger, right? So it doesn't care about your immune system. It doesn't care about
Reproduction.
your reproduction, like all of these things. And she said, this was like where I was like, oh my gosh. She said, if you've ever, let's say, had a job interview or you're going to do a presentation and all of a sudden you have to go to the bathroom, right? We've all had like the nervous poos. I mean, let's just be honest. She was like, that is our body's innate response to stress, because naturally it doesn't care about pooping, or whatever. It's trying to rid ourselves so we can move faster to get away from that lion. So what happens with us now in the state that we are in is we are constantly stressed. And so if we are continually, which I was for years, I had life stuff going on, moving across the country, moving the kids to different schools, blah, blah, blah. And I shared this on Jenny's podcast, I felt like I was tweaking in the red for years until my body said no more. And that was the first time that I went to my doctor. But it made sense because we can't survive like that. So that's why Shavasana is so important, or taking 15 minutes to do a little meditation to just power down our brain. Because just like the four-legged chair, if we keep going, I mean, if we keep going at that stress level, our cortisol will crash, our adrenals will crash. And now that leg of the chair is completely off and likely affecting, the other ones as well.
Yeah. And it's worth saying too, that someone told me one time, your adrenals play catch up. So for me, I had a 2-year-old and I had been up almost every night since for 2 years before my adrenals said, nope, you're not getting up.
Oh yeah.
So your adrenals, because they're in this state of fight or flight, and they're just like, push out the cortisol, push out the cortisol, push out the cortisol, like survive, run from the bear, right? Because it's constantly in that state. It has to be completely zapped. So however long that takes, right? And then when it happens, but it's a catch-up game. We have my second daughter she'll be 18 months next week. And when we decided to adopt again, I was very clear with my husband. I was like, I'm not sacrificing my adrenals this time around. It was like a 2-year battle. And I talked to I have a good friend, my apothecary pharmacist is a close friend of mine. And he's the one that creates my progesterone cream. He's like my lifesaver. But I told him, I'm like, we're adopting again and I'm scared to death. Like I'm scared to death because I've been in that adrenal crisis. I've had my fair share of migraines. Like I can't put myself back in there. And he was like, you have a husband, right? And I said, yeah. And he's like, sounds like your husband's on night duty. And I was like, because here's the thing, women have a heightened state of cortisol response as compared to men. And so it makes sense, right? We're like feely people. We have all the feelings. Like men, I feel like for the most part are just like, okay. Like if I tell him like, can you believe that she said that to me? He's like, get over it. You know what I mean? Like men just don't, it just totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So he's been on night duty for 18 months. And she sleeps through the night, I would say most nights. So he's very lucky as compared to me. I will just throw that in there. But he's like, why am I so tired? Like just in the last 2 weeks, he's like, why am I so tired? And I was like, it's your adrenals, but they're just now waving their flag. Like they're just now like, hey, the last 18 months have been rough. So it plays catch up with you for sure. And also worth mentioning is I don't know if we've said this or not, but like you said, your body values survival over everything else. And so when women are experiencing shorter or longer cycles, when their cycles start to change, when reproduction, starts to shift, it's usually a result of a cortisol response. So your body is prioritizing survival over reproduction. So a lot of women, I'll be honest with you, like most women assume they ovulate. Most women assume like, well, yeah, I think I ovulate. Like, I think the science book tells me I ovulate on day 14. When they start to actually track their cycles or their saliva patterns or whatever, they start to find, well, there's no surge in my hormone happening. Like, why is my saliva pattern not appearing? Like what's happening? And I have to tell them like, oh, your body's not ovulating. What? Like they just assume they are, right? Just like me during that infertility journey. Like, why wasn't I ovulating? Well, my body was in a state of survival over reproduction. So ovulation was not important.
So, okay. And I know you and I have briefly chatted about this in the Facebook group, but how can you have a period if you're not ovulating?
Yeah. So there's a difference so the first thing I'll say is if you're on birth control and you have what you think is a period, it's not a period. It's what we call a pill bleed. But regardless, if you ovulate or not, you have a period based on the uterine lining that builds up. So what happens is your progesterone naturally should kick in no matter what. So it comes in right at mid-cycle, assuming that there's an egg, right? So progesterone is what's going to support that pregnancy. It's what's going to support the fertility component of your uterine lining. So it's going to come into play no matter what. As that progesterone starts to help shape and build the corpus luteum, which is essentially the lining of your uterus, there comes a point where that lining has to shed. Gotcha. So the progesterone happens no matter what. The egg is what's in question. Is there an egg or not?
Yeah. So we should probably wrap it up, but I have one more question and then we'll tell people where that they can find your awesomeness. Would you say the top maybe 5 supplements that you would recommend for most perimenopausal, menopausal women? What would those be?
Oh, goodness.
Or 3.
Okay. So number 1 would be magnesium for sure. We've already talked about magnesium glycinate. Make sure you're taking at least what the bottle says. Ask your doctor how much you can take. Most functional doctors will tell you that you take as much as you can tolerate before you start to notice looser stools. Trust me, you won't be like diarrhea running to the bathroom usually. For me, I remember my doctor was like, you're only taking 400. She's like, up it to 800. So I went to 800 and she said, how are you feeling? And I'm like, fine. And she's like, it actually helped me become more regular. So if you struggle in that department, it can be helpful there too. She's like, go to 1200. I was like, okay. Wow. So I went to 1200. And then during certain times of my cycle, I will go up to 1600. So you can, and that's, again, I'm not a doctor, but ask your doctor what's right for you, but just know that what's on the bottle is sort of the safe over the counter version, but a lot of women are severely deficient. So you may need more. So magnesium is number 1. And this is sort of like, I know you guys know Angie. I mean, Shakeology is and this is something I've been consuming it for 13 years. And of course, the plant-based version, the vegan version is the one I like. And the reason I endorse it to my course takers is because it's really hard to find food form adaptogens that your body can absorb well. And so the fact that Shakeology has, it has ashwagandha, it has maca, it has like 7 different adaptogenic herbs in it. in food form, like with, 70 other whole food ingredients that helps your digestive system absorb those adaptogens. We didn't talk about adaptogens. Again, you can hear more on the podcast, sorry, but adaptogens are sort of things found in nature that help your body handle stress. And so again, whether that's environmental stress, emotional stress, or whatever. So ashwagandha is the big one. That's the one that's probably most commonly used, sort of medicinally. Most functional medicine doctors will put women on ashwagandha, or they'll put them on what's considered adrenal support. I like it in Shakeology form. First of all, it tastes better. Second of all, your body's going to absorb it better. So that's number two. Most important for anybody listening who is exercising and training at least 5 days a week, you need to be consuming. And so this isn't necessarily a supplement vitamin, but you need to be consuming 30 to 40 grams of protein within 30 minutes of your workout.
And is that any type of workout?
No. So
Okay.
see, I knew you were going to ask that. So you need to have, I recommend something plant-based, non-whey. 80% of Americans are whey sensitive and dairy sensitive. So even if you think to yourself, dairy doesn't bother me, I don't have any problems. Sometimes people say that, but a lot of times they're wrong. It either impacts the gut, the skin. There's lots of different ways that dairy can be inflammatory to people. So that would be one thing that I would say, if you can eliminate, that would be great too. But so try to find a post-workout recovery. I like Beachbody's Performance Vegan Recover just because it's simple and it checks all the boxes for me. It tastes good, plant-based, no dairy. And it has, you want to look for L-leucine, L-leucine, Leucine. And you want your protein to be at least 20, but if you can get 30 to 40 grams of protein within that 30-minute window. If you're a cycling female in your fertile years, 20 grams of protein is adequate. As you start getting to perimenopause, we want to be closer to 30 grams. And once you're menopause and beyond, you want 40 grams.
Wow.
Our muscle mass deteriorates, obviously, as we age. Estrogen plays a role in that. L-leucine is going to help save that muscle mass for you post-workout. So that would be number 3.
Which workout, Jenny, which workout? Because Angie asked, is that for all workouts or just certain workouts?
I use it. The only time I'll put it this way. The only time I don't use it is if I'm just walking or doing like a light yoga. If I do even a 20-minute hit, or especially strength training, like do not miss the protein after a strength training workout. But I even use it after cardio too. I use it all the time unless I'm just doing like a rest day, active recovery yoga or walk.
Gotcha. And so I believe the Recover is 20 grams. So do you do 2 scoops, or you find another source for
The way that
additional?
So the way that I do mine is I actually will consume I do my workout and then I consume my Recover. I kind of drain it like as soon as my workout's over, within probably 15 minutes. And then I go to the shower. I don't know if you guys have ever done this before. I love to take my shake to the shower. Like,
Never done that.
okay, does your shake make you cold? Like when I drink my shake,
Yeah.
it like makes me cold no matter what season it is. So I take it with me to the shower and it's like perfect because it's like I'm nice and warm and I drink it in the shower. It's weird. So I like to do that because Shakeology is like 19 grams and the Performance Recover is 20. So I get that nice 39 gram boost, but it could also be, please stay away from like protein bars or, powders, stuff like that. Like try to get, like, if you're a meat eater, try to get some lean protein in there. It could be hard boiled eggs. It could be lean turkey, chicken, all that kind of stuff is good too. So you could even do like a post-workout meal with like a salad with chicken on top and your Recover with it to try to get that extra boost of protein. Yeah.
Cool.
So there was something else I was going to say there. Oh, the other thing that's worth mentioning is never, ever, ever exercise on an empty stomach as a female. So, and I'm going to come back to your supplement question, but Stacey Sims is really adamant about this. The science supports it. You guys know that there's a lot out there right now about intermittent fasting, keto. I've got all that on my podcast. You can listen to that. It's not good for women. The research has been done on men. Both of those things are exceptional weight loss tools for men, not so great for women, especially who are still having periods. The reason comes back to what we were just talking about. If you're exercising on an empty stomach at a fasted state, what is your body going to do? It's going to go into survival mode. It's going to escalate your cortisol because it's not being fed. And so the first thing it's going to do is it's going to delay that ovulation, right? It's going to delay that reproduction. It's going to say, we got to eat. Like, there's no food here. Like, what are you doing giving me just energized? Like, I need something else. So you need to have something, and it can be something that's like 150 calories. It could be something like a beach bar. If you're a beach bar consumer, it could be something like a piece of, Ezekiel toast with peanut butter, like just something that is light that you can get into your stomach. And some women will say, I can't exercise at all with food in my stomach. And I'm like, you have to find something so that your body can exercise safely. It has to feel safe. And that's when you're going to get the most calorie burn. You're going to boost your metabolism. Make sure you're eating. So magnesium for my supplements, magnesium, the plant-based Shakeology and the plant-based performance are definitely up there. If you're somebody who struggles with period pain, or if you feel like you're sick all the time, zinc, I like to recommend what's called zinc picolinate. It's just a specific type, better absorbability. Zinc picolinate will help with not only the cramping, but it can also help with your immunity. And then kind of coming back to the adrenals, I think that women after the age of 35 should all be on some sort of adrenal support, sometimes even in addition to that Shakeology. So if you're seeing perimenopausal symptoms, if you're starting to see your cycles are lengthening, or you're spotting, leading up to your period, or things are changing, I guess is the best way to say it. Things are changing after the age of 35. There's something out there called Gaia, Gaia, adrenal support, and they are capsules, and they have ashwagandha, maca, some of the same things that are in Shakeology, but sometimes some women need the extra boost. So it's okay to do both. I mean, I do both myself, because again, if we come back to that whole idea that the adrenals are now compensating for sex hormone production after the age of 35, heading into age 40, we want to keep those adrenals rested, supported, and able to handle that job. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So those would probably be my top 5. If you're dealing with estrogen dominance, if that comes back on your lab work, then estrofactors and DIM are both top of the list.
Awesome. Cool. And obviously we have mentioned Jenny's podcast. It's called Sync SYNC. SYNC Your Life with Jenny Swisher. I posted it in the chat, but I never know where that chat goes. So I will post it in our group as well. And Jenny has mentioned, and I have taken her course. Jenny, where can they find more information about the course? And actually you have a free hormone evaluation, what's that thing, quiz, right?
Yeah, I do. So if you're wondering, like, do I have some sort of imbalance at play for me? You can take the quiz. You'll get immediate results. It's just sync.jennyswisher.com. My name is JENNY, Swisher, like the cigar.com. And that's where you can take the quiz. And then the cool thing is it'll give you the results. And then you'll also get an email from me with a breakdown of what that means for you. So what you should be asking your doctor about related to what your result is. I also have, if you just go to jennyswisher.com, or you can find me on social media, I'm connected to Angie, so it should be pretty easy. I do have a course that is ongoing. You have lifetime access to it when you hop in. It's 6 total modules. I take you through, basically, I just took my 16-year struggle and bottled it into a course that women could take in 6 weeks instead of going through all that, so that they would know exactly what to do with their doctor. I give you, like Angie said, we start off with helping you find the right practitioner for you and knowing who's the right practitioner. I give you downloadables to take to your doctor with questions to ask and testing, like very specific testing to request. So far, I've had not a single, like everybody that I've heard from that has taken that to their doctor's impressed. And they're like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like we can definitely do this. Where'd you get this from? So I'm not trying to brag, but I am saying that like I have had all the tests. So I know what you need and what you don't need. Save your money. So I tell you what to do when it comes to testing, how to get the proper testing, because to me, like originally it was like, I'm going to put together a course about cycle syncing and I'm going to teach women because fitness and nutrition is my background. And I said, I can't do that in good conscience because I know that too many women are coming in with an imbalance. So we have to figure out what that imbalance is. And then you have to be supplemented for that imbalance or that deficiency in order to see results. So we start there. We start with find a functional medicine doctor, get the proper testing so that you can get the proper supplementation. Then we say, okay, now let's track your cycle. Let's figure out your energy flows, right? Let's figure out how we can cycle sync your workouts and your nutrition, and all that is part of the course.
And it
So-
really is a great course. I mean, I can't tell you how much better I feel. You know, weight hasn't yet come off, but at least I'm not necessarily like stressed about it like I used to, because I'm like, I have chilled out. And I will say, you know, Jenny she's always available. And I'm laughing because, you know, I'm the one that's like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, hey, so this is what, you know, and she's always right there. I'm working with things with Ava. She's helped me, you know, have conversations, you know, like maybe this is going on or this is going on, you know. So this is not a sales pitch, whatever, but I'm just saying Jenny has been such a huge help for me. And that is exactly why I asked her to do this, because as much as I've learned about myself, I told her, I was like, I'm not the expert. And I know that these are not things that most people talk about. I didn't really even know that day one of my cycle was the first day of my bleed. I learned that day one of her course. So I was like, oh shit, okay. You know, I didn't know that. So thank you so much, Jenny. I so appreciate all of this. And thank you ladies for joining. I know it went an hour and a half, but I hope everybody found it helpful and insightful, and that you now at least feel maybe a little more empowered to find some more answers for yourself. And now you have a personal resource that can help you along the way.
Yeah, I like to say you deserve to live with maximum energy, and too many women aren't. So if that's you, it's worth looking into. And my hope is that whether it's the course or just listening to the podcast or checking out the blog that I have, like whatever, like find the resources that work for you and take that with you to the right doctor for you. And I promise that you'll come out ahead, because like I said, I think unfortunately society has sort of bottled us into this. I feel like too many women don't even understand hormones on this level. So
No, for
you guys
sure.
have hopefully learned something and can take it with you and apply something, but I'm here for questions along the way if you have any.
Cool. Awesome.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you, ladies. I will save
you.
this. We'll get it uploaded and I'll post it in the thing. Carmen, did you have a question?
Oh no, I was just saying thanks.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Just
all
saying
right.
thanks.
Good night,
Have a good night, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.